Good morning. This is Dr. McDaniel at GYN Corner. I am a board-certified obstetrician gynecologist in New York City, and I'm bringing to you all things health-related for women. Thank you for joining me at the corner today. I decided to do a series of pretty quick, just a couple of minute presentations on oral contraceptives or birth control pills. I get a lot of questions throughout the day and every single week on basically fallacies or myths that a lot of women still have with respect to the birth control pills, or just not understanding concepts and such. So I did what I felt was a pretty thorough review of all of the contraceptive options several months ago, probably about 9 months ago, if you'd like to refer to that first for that kind of overview. And today, the session today, I'm just going to give a brief history of birth control pills. So Margaret Sanger, who was the founder of the Planned Parenthood organization, she collaborated with a doctor, and they went into collaboration on research into hormones, what we call the female hormones, so progesterone predominantly, to suppress ovulation, and that was in the 1940s. I did the research yesterday and I forgot the doctor's name. I didn't write it down. I think it was Dr. Rock. I'll try to find that really quickly while I'm giving the overview. So the brief overview for that history is that she worked with a physician in the 40s to 50s on undertaking research on progesterone, which is the hormone that causes menstrual cycles. It cleans out the uterus, and it's predominantly responsible for premenstrual symptoms and the menstrual cycle. So estrogen, which is kind of the yin to the yang of progesterone, is the hormone that's responsible for building up the blood to cause a menstrual cycle, and only for a couple of the premenstrual symptoms, such as nausea, vomiting, and headaches. So they went into collaboration, and they were able to ascertain funding for it, and the birth control pill was originally orchestrated as progesterone only. And side note, progesterone only pill is what we now use as emergency contraception, or what people call the morning after pill. So they went into collaboration, and let me see if I have the name. I think it was Dr. Rock. I don't see it on this. I don't see it on here at all about the doctor, so sorry. I think it was Dr. Rock. I'll come back to that in a moment. So the original, which was kind of a way to foray the birth control pills into the market, originally the birth control pill was not marketed for contraception, and that's because contraceptive, and especially medication to prevent pregnancy, was deemed immoral. So it was originally introduced as a method to treat abnormal uterine bleeding or dysfunctional uterine bleeding, and we still use birth control pills for that effort today. But in 1957, the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, approved what we now consider contraceptive pills as used to manage abnormal bleeding. 3 years later, in 1960, because they had been proven to be safe and they were widely used off-label, as we call it, for birth control, they were then wholeheartedly approved by the FDA in 1960 for birth control methods. The original birth control pill was called Enovid, and the Enovid was had an extremely high hormone level compared to what we use now. So it had 10 milligrams of progesterone, and they added estrogen right before it was approved in 1957 because estrogen prevents unscheduled bleeding. So the progesterone is basically to clean the uterus out. Estrogen is to build the uterine bleeding up. So, so they added estrogen to decrease the rate of unscheduled or surprise bleeding episodes. So it was mestranol was the estrogen that was used. So now mestranol is only used for severe pre-cancer situations. Pretty much never use it. I think I used it once about 25 years ago for a lady with cervical cancer who had a lot of abnormal bleeding. It was a way to kind of stop the bleeding immediately to give her a little bit better quality of life. But we just pretty much don't use estrogen. Mestranol, we don't use estrogen that high. It's 150 mics of estrogen. So 150 mics of estrogen and 10 milligrams of progesterone, which is extremely high. It is about 10 times higher than what we use nowadays. So 150 mics of estrogen in 1960 came down to 60 mics of estrogen in the 80s, and then 50 mics of estrogen, so already down from 150 to 50 mics in the late 80s, early 90s, then 35 mics of estrogen in the 80s to 90s was introduced. That 35 mics, all the way down from 150 mics, went down to 20 mics of estrogen in the mid-90s. And then 25 was introduced. Then 10 mics of estrogen was introduced around 2007 or 2005 or 2007 or so. So we went all the way down from 150 mics of estrogen down to 10 mics of estrogen, which is extremely low. And we also have the vaginal ring, which is equivalent to 15 mics of estrogen. And the non-estrogen pills have been brought out. They are 35 mics of estrogen. Our zero that was introduced around the time of the 35 mics of estrogen is the non-estrogen, which is progesterone only, and we have a new brand, only progesterone only, which I'll mention on a different presentation, where you don't have to take the pill every day at the same time. You just have to take it every 24 hours. So as the Virginia Slims commercial says, we've come a long way, baby. So we've come all the way down from 150 mics of estrogen, which cause lots of problems, all the way down to 10 mics of estrogen. All of the problems that were originally noted when the pills first came out have been extremely reduced. So the biggest problems were headaches, migraines, breast tenderness, a lot of problems with melasma, so darkening of the forehead, darkening of the cheeks and the chin, uterine cancer, strokes, heart attacks, problems with the legs, deep vein thrombosis, superficial thrombophlebitis, pulmonary emboli, which are clots in the lungs, which have a 50% mortality rate. So 50% of women who have a pulmonary emboli will die from it. And really heavy, long cycles during the menstrual week. So all of those problems have been drastically reduced to pretty much negligible levels, save one exception, which I'll mention in another presentation. So the birth control pills have been drastically improved for safety and maintaining their efficacy. I'm going to stop right there on today's presentation because I said it was going to be a couple of minutes, and now we're heading towards 10 minutes. So thank you for watching today, GYN Corner, on a brief consolidated history of the strength of the birth control pills dropping drastically from 1957 when they were introduced to currently 2020 when they're in very, very wide, broad usage. Thanks again for joining me. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks for hitting the like, subscribe, and follow buttons, checking out the YouTube and the podcast GYN Corner. Bye.